Welcome and thank you for joining the panel on getting our impact driver license. My name is Doron, known by developer as Not That Doron. I'm privacy and compliance product lead in Outbrain. I'll be mediating this session today, where we're going to be diving deeper into impact driven and understand basically what impact driven is. Allow me to start by introducing our panelists today. Liat, engaged product lead, 18 months. A bit of background. Engaged product lead, 18 months into IDP with Smart Logic. Achievements, 20% adoption rate of Smart Logic with over 50% RPM lift. Benny, ROAS product lead. 8 months into IDP, 100% improvement in budget fulfillment of fully automated CBS campaigns. Bringing around 150K daily revenue. Yeah, impressive. Of course, Osnat, head of product and operations and optimizations. IDP addict for 16 months. Some of our achievements, 20% RPM lift for Smart Feed and establishing a new IDP effort for quality. Last but not least, our dev representative today, Shay, full stack engineer. Shay is with the ROAS effort, 5 months into IDP, and he seems to be converted, soon to be you as well. Before we start looking into the journey of my colleagues embracing IDP, it would be wise to first understand what IDP is and why do we want to make Outbrain an impact-driven company. Before we start, what's the P for IDP? Product? Process? Process, not project. It should be C for company. For culture, we need to have stickers and this clarified. For development, yeah, the impact development company. Okay. As long as we're all aligned, we can start. So the first step for a company to become an impact-driven company is to have objectives. A company needs to know what's the focus, and based on those objectives, we can evaluate how we can create this impact. 3 main objectives were introduced by Outbrain leadership. Publisher growth, which is associated with Engage and can be associated with a Smart Logic IDP. ROAS, led by Benny, writing here, and we're going to be discussing more about the ROAS IDP. Last but not least, user engagement, led by Osnat. And all those objectives are above us. There's something we're looking at, focused at, and they're leading us in our day-to-day decisions. And they are becoming the focus for the core KPIs that we define. When I say we, I basically mean everyone in the company. In IDP, it's no longer just the product's responsibility to ideate or prioritize or think about the repercussions of what he's developing. This is becoming a company-wide effort, a team effort, or as we know, call it effort. So when I say we, I mean the AMs, the sales, the product managers, marketing, engineers from different teams are expected to team up and ideate on how to impact the KPIs that need to target those objectives. This is the core. And if I need to summarize this, I would say it like this. We are focused on making an impact. Hence, we commit on expected impact, not on feature delivery. And when we commit on feature delivery, we can see it's a different strategy than focusing on how we can create the impact on our objectives. Before we start the panel, it's kind of difficult to kick it off with talking about impact or without really understanding what we're trying to achieve here today. When we look at what we're looking here, we're trying to make Outbrain an impact-driven company. I think that's the objective of this panel as well. It's kind of one step taking impact-driven into the consideration. So setting our objective, we need a KPI. And I think, I need to get everyone excited. And I think that's a great KPI to start with. Maybe I can measure how many people here are excited. That would be a starting point for me. So everyone who's excited, no, we need to count. No data noise. Excited about IDP. Not in general. Yes, we need you to be focused on IDP. So who's excited about IDP? Please raise your hand. On Zoom as well, if someone on Zoom. No, yeah. It's about 50% excitement. Okay. We'll be sampling the excitement level during the panel, and we might just cut the plug early on this panel if we don't see improvement. So, let me start here. I think I'll start with our panelists who have been sitting here politely. Why are we making those changes? What are the weaknesses we have identified in the roadmap or long-term planning we're using today?
Yeah, so I think that one of the things, in my perspective, that were not very good with the previous way that we worked is that we used to think that we know what the market needs. And this was based on market research. It was based on feedback from the market and talking to people. But it was a feedback that we got. We built something based on that, and then we looked at the KPIs. We thought, what will be the KPI for the thing that the market needs, and then we measured it. And now it's working actually the back way. So instead of defining the KPI after we actually get the feedback, we first define what is the KPI, what are the things that we actually want to do, and then we check if this is something that the market needs actually. And I can give an example of what was not working well. We had a feature that we developed, and it was based on a lot of feedback that we got from major clients. But the thing is that it was just around 5-6 clients that were big clients, but we got feedback from them and we developed it, and eventually those clients used it, but the rest of the clients didn't. So it wasn't really fitting the business objective of the company. It was something that we got feedback from the market. We thought that they needed, but if we would have looked at the objective, it was a different decision. Maybe we wouldn't develop it at all.
Yeah. So it's working. Yeah. For me, the main weakness in the way that we worked before is that I consider a feature to be completed once it hit the market. But I didn't really realize what was the impact of the business for this feature of the business. And we just ended up with releasing features with sometimes zero value. And for me, this is the main downside in the previous process.
Shay, would you like to share the R&D perspective?
Yes, of course. Until now, developers were used to get the feature which was kind of already baked. It was already thinking of for a long time. You already got the spec for it, maybe few mocks. You were talking about it and designed it together with product, together with the team. Maybe it was part of grooming, maybe it was part of some high-level design review together with everyone. And you could have been working on it for a very long time without really know what's going to be the results at the end. And I can give one example. When we're working on, I was part of a really big feature, part of a really huge epic. And we were working on it for a very long time together with a lot of different R&D teams. And eventually, after all of our hard work, and after it was already rolled out, we saw that it's not really working as we expected. And after a lot of struggles and trying to make it work, it was decided to kill this feature. It was very unfortunate to hear such thing. And in IDP, it works exactly the other way around. You will not put all of your efforts at the beginning. You will first start to understand what are the KPIs, what's the impact you want to do, and how you're going to measure it. And then you're going to split it to really small pieces and take it step by step, and to put the less effort that you can at the beginning at least, just to see that you're making the impact. If you hit the goals, then you're going to proceed to the next stage. If not, then it wouldn't been so painful to kill this lifter eventually.
We're going to go into the terminology a bit more in a second. But Osnat, do you have anything you think about that?
Just to complement what Shay has said, we used the feedback loops were very long. We could have spent and invest a lot of resources and time in developing, in designing, in speccing, designing, developing, and just to, in the best case, realize that we need to make adjustments if we measured. We not always measured. And in the bad scenario, we realized that we need that there's no impact. We didn't make any impact. And the question is, if we have an hypothesis or any thought about something that can make an impact, how fast we can, what we can do to quickly realize if it's really going to make the impact or not, and just stop investing.
Okay, so I can understand that, you know, the long-term process is longer. It requires longer cycles. It's based on different inputs. But what are the actual benefits of IDP in terms of dealing with those cases, or how did it improve our ability to identify this?
So I can say that when I look at Smart Logic, the main benefit that I see is the engagement of the team. I think that when the team is getting constantly context of the business needs, as well as being part of the ideation and product innovation, and also the entire team is accountable for the impact that this product is having, and all of these elements together create a really high engagement in the team. In addition, I think that there is a huge benefit also around efficiency, as all of us are really focused on the goals and the KPIs. We are actually developing only what matters, and we are not investing any efforts or time in anything that is not moving the needle.
You really like the what matters here, because that's one of the main points on my end. The way that we decide what matters, this is a really strong point with IDP. We define before we start developing what matters based on a KPI, and this helps us also not just prioritize things, it also helps us validate afterwards. So we can define what matters, and if we don't hit that KPI that we set as something that matters, we can kill it, and if we do hit, we can move to the next stage.
So just kind of validating, you know, the measurements, and also the fact that you're reaching, you know, the initial impact that you were planning.
Yeah, so it's both the validation and the definition of what matters. So both ends are based on numbers, which is, I think, much better than what we had before.
I heard actually two things here. I heard from Liat accountability and validating data by you. So I'll remind you all that we're on 50% excitement, and I'm not seeing many smiles. So if you want to continue this panel, because of the masks, keep the masks on. Okay, Osnat, you were already.
Yeah, I wanted to say, for me, I was lucky enough to run and drive projects which are joint efforts by multiple teams across the organization. And the challenge is to drive everyone to the same direction, to keep everybody aligned. And it's mostly communication, right? Because you have developers, operations, product marketing, you have business, and you need to get everybody aligned. And that requires a lot of communication. With IDP, we have a weekly meeting. In that weekly meeting, We get everybody around the KPIs. We look at the goals versus the actuals. We review all the activities, the team members, each of them present their activity, their status. Within 30 minutes, everybody is aligned, and it saves a lot of communication and bring everybody to focus.
Cool.
I can say for me the benefits were that in our effort team there are a lot of representatives from different R&D teams, from different organic teams, and this way I got the chance to work with these different developers, products, business members, team members, and to learn from them what they are doing and how. And also I feel much more involved in the lifters because I got the lifter from the beginning of it, from the moment it was only idea until the moment we can see the results, to roll it out and to see what impact it gives us.
I'd like to add something that with what you said. When somebody presents in the weekly and they actually become the owners, and I see the developers owning their lifters, owning the impact, highly committed to delivering the impact.
Yeah, I want to say something that Hila said a couple of days ago when I talked to her, that we had like a meeting that is showing the numbers. We I think it was 4 team members that showed the graphs and the dashboards that they built to track their own lifters. And Hila and Noah from our BI analysts sat there in the meeting and they didn't present anything. Like, this is something that is really cool. Instead of asking BI to develop a dashboard for that, we actually have the developers that are tracking everything, and the data science team as well. And they showed us the numbers and they explained exactly what are the lifters. And actually, we didn't, like Hila said, no, and I didn't do anything. No, I asked her, are you presenting something over Slack? And she wasn't. So yeah, this is a really neat thing, I think, with IDP.
Thank you, Ida. Okay, so first of all, that sounds amazing. One thing I did really like hearing is learning. I think the opportunity to work cross-team and to centralize different focal points, different stakeholders, and have them meet together. Even a weekly sounds amazing if you can do it even more. But I think this transition of knowledge also opens up new ideas and new opportunities. Looking ahead, I'm hearing a lot of terminology here about a lot of new buzzwords, effort, lifters. I have to say, they sound familiar, but can you crawl, walk, run us through this terminology?
Yeah. So you talked about learning. Maybe we can teach something the audience here. So yeah, we have an effort is a team. Actually, it's a lot of people, members of the effort. As Osnat said, we have people on the ROS team. We have BI analysts. We have Omer from Buyers that joined us. We have all the Algo team, Ofir's team that is part of the effort. We have our business lead, Kelly. So we have a lot of people, and self-serve and Urit from DataX. So we have a lot of people that are part of the effort. And the idea behind an effort is that we have an objective. Our objective is ROAS. The objective is something that is defined by the company. And the team, the effort, defines together, led by me, by the product, defines a KPI tree. And the KPI tree is what will lift and bring us to the direction of the objective. And then by defining the KPI tree, we can go and define every lifter that we can focus on a specific KPI. And we can define what will be a lifter that will raise that KPI. So that's lifter and that's effort.
So I'll try to explain what crawl, walk, run is. We asked earlier, we have a hypothesis. How are you going to validate that it's actually making the impact? So the first step that we have is the crawl step. It's a POC. It's the minimal effort possible to validate that we can actually bring the impact. It could be, it's going to be quick and dirty. It doesn't necessarily need to include and involve development. It could be based on, it's not going to be, definitely not going to be scalable. It could be just reports and analysis of data. It could be nothing, no UI, a process with Excels just to validate. And we have clear KPIs, small scale thing. And if we hit the KPIs and realize that what we thought is working, then we'll continue to the next step. That's the walk step. This is where we start developing. This is where we it's still not scalable, not at a high scale, and might not have a UI. Something that the developers may need to operate, some scripting. I don't know, but at least something that we can start scaling. And eventually, when we hit the KPIs of the walk step, we'll move forward to the run step, which is a full-blown product, fully scalable, with all the nice things to have that we wanted.
That's cool. So it's kind of taking it step by step, I would say.
Exactly.
I can find an analogy, like I think I understand that it's like now we're looking for a new place to stay, for a new home. So my wife suggested instead of buying a house, let's first rent a house, see if we if we like the neighborhood, if we're getting the right signals from that neighborhood before we make the full investment. I can see how I can adopt this to my life hacks. Cool. So I hear IDP wasn't as smooth as in the beginning as we're talking about it today. What challenges did you face when you first started working with this method?
I can say from my end, as developers, you need, first of all, to have a little bit change of mindset over here, because you need to think of a way to improvise, to make things, as you mentioned earlier, quick and dirty. At least on the early stages of the lifter. And you need, first of all, to decide what are the impact that you want to do and how you're going to do it the fastest as you can at the beginning, just to see if it hit your goals. And you cannot, as developers, we're used to think of, okay, I'm going to develop a new feature, I'm going to make it very generic, very robust, maybe with a lot of future extensions. In Hebrew, we can call it הכנה למזגן for the future. And in IDP, you think how to make it quick and dirty, and a lot of improvise over here. For example, one of our first lifters, where it was the first time we needed to measure, the first time we needed to do A/B testing, and we didn't have the appropriate tools for that. And we needed some kind of tool for the A/B testing. And eventually we think we had an idea to use an existing tool, which probably already familiar with, the flag flipper, just for that, even though it's not its purpose for doing A/B testing. And it really helped us, and it gave us what we need. And even though we are knowing that probably we are going to rewrite it and to use other tools, at least for the early stages, it's enough.
I can say that my biggest challenge with IDP is to decide to kill a lifter, because it's really hard to give up something that you believed in. And I can tell you that in Smart Logic, we had few cases where we developed lifters in crawl, and we were positive that we are going to see crazy RPM lifts. But in reality, when we measured it, we found out that it's exactly the opposite. Sometimes even drops in the RPM, and we were pretty amazed by this. And I think that these are exactly the points in time where you understand the value of the IDP, because if you were not measuring it, you end up with releasing something with either zero value or even creating a damage. So, but it's still a challenge.
Don't get too attached to your lifters, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. From my end, I can say that one of the things that I had difficulties at the beginning was the prioritization and how to define what is something that is success. It's not always easy like by the book. You'll have a BI analyst. You can analyze the data before. You can decide, okay, this is something that we need to lift, and this is the lifter that will bring this amount of data, this amount of improvement to the KPI. But not always it works like that. In a lot of cases, you just need to either guesstimate or put in a number that will be good enough for that lifter to be invested in. And this is something that Ori told me, that not always, like if you have an idea and you calculating the impact of that idea is something that will take you a lot of time, just give a number that you think that is feasible and you think that the effort is worthwhile. And if you'll be above that number, then you can continue, and if you'll be below, you can kill this lifter. So this is something that you need some experience to begin with. So it was difficult at the beginning. And another thing is the dashboards. So measurement is something that Shay just gave an example, and I think that Ophir can relate to that as well. Building the visibility behind every lifter, building the infrastructure behind that, and Hila also can relate to that. The dashboard that we have for business is something that took us a while to build, and a lot of times at the beginning, it's something that you can get frustrated that you don't have the data, and you need to pull the data every time separately, and this is something that you just need time for it.
Sometimes you start looking at all the data, too much data.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Too many KPIs, like everything is interesting. And eventually you need to create the business dashboard with the Uber KPIs. To me, one thing when I joined a year and a half ago, when I joined the optimization engine IDP, one of the frustrating thing was something that is not specific to IDP. It's general to any project, I think. But with IDP, we were able to solve it. Is tracking the progress of things that we developed. So we had there was one huge Monday board with all the with the product backlog and what we call lifters. But at the same time, there was another board that the R&D used. They used Trello. In other teams, they use Jira, a totally different board where they break down each of the lifters to separate tasks. Impossible to connect between the lifters in my board to the tasks in the Trello board, in the R&D board. Terminology is totally different, right? The more time passes and different terminology is given to the same thing. So impossible to track. And one of the things that we did was unite into one board. Inside the Monday board, the lifters are the items and sub-items, and that's a new feature. Yamit was the first one to discover that feature in Monday. Sub-items are being used for tasks. So everything is in one board, and we're able to track the progress of everything. Additionally, we added a few columns that are specific to IDP. The KPI is there. The goal of the KPI is there. The state that was recently added, crawl, walk, or run, to understand where we are in which stage each of the lifters is. I think it's great. Like everybody is on one board. Everybody is able to understand where we are at the same time, together with the weeklies, alignment.
And I think that this is something that also shows like how we develop, like we're learning as we go with the IDP all the time. Like the board, we had a different board at the beginning. We added some stuff and we changed the columns. And you said just now that you added the stage. We don't have the stage. It's in the name. So like every effort is also behaving differently and learns according to the mistakes that we did.
So the stage is a new thing. And I'm looking at Yamit because we're constantly learning. Yamit is there for 2 years, escorting the efforts, and she can attest that we're constantly learning and improving ourselves and getting better.
I think that's a straight point. I'm new to IDP. I've been working with Yamit for the last 3 months, and I think every effort is a different combination and challenges. IDP is kind of the the guidelines that we look at, but eventually it's not about what board or how you're going to be consolidating. It's the fact that you're going to be speaking the same language of impact.
I'm happy to say that yesterday I had a meeting with Hila and Asaf Klein. They're not here, right? For the first time, they were speaking in the language of lifters. So, yeah, I was very happy about it.
Cool. So, aside from the challenges, did you encounter any difficulty of getting everyone on board? I mean, I'm sure Shay from the development can share his stories, but what were the challenges of building the effort?
Yeah, sure. I can say that, as I mentioned earlier, there's a little bit change of mindset here. For me, it's very refreshing to start my day and to look at the dashboards that we created, to follow the progress of our lifters, and to refresh the dashboard to see what's the measurements that were changed for the KPIs, if it hit the goals or not, to follow the progress of each lifter, and to make together the decisions together with the team if we are going to proceed to the next stage or not. So for me, it's very refreshing. Until now, developers are used to work on a feature to work on it for a few days, few weeks, few months maybe, to hopefully everything will pass QA, to pass all the tests, to write simulator tests, unit testing and whatever. Probably they are going to monitor it on production to see nothing is not broken. Of course, you need to do it also in IDP, but until now, this is the main purpose of developers was to follow the progress, to follow the feature on production, to see nothing is not broken. And in IDP, you follow the progress of the lifter to see that it's going to impact the KPIs that you decided to measure.
So it seems you're much more involved in the business now, more familiar with the feature. Would you say it's related to IDP?
Yes, I think yes, because as I said, you're going to be much more involved in the lifter from the beginning, from the moment it's only idea, and it's nice to see the progress of the lifter. You want to go to the next step. You don't want to kill this lifter. You follow its steps like it's kind of a baby steps, and you feel like this lifter is kind of your own baby. So you feel much more involved.
Shay, I think that there's also the fact that you're working with two different teams. It's also a challenge, right?
Yes, I think it was the main and still is my main challenge. I'm working on two different teams. One is my organic team, self-serve, which I feel like it's mandatory to keep them involved in the lifters that I'm doing, because they are going to help me with DPRs, with code review, maybe with the design. They are going to help me with testing it, QA, and so they need to be involved and familiar with the lifters that I'm doing. And from the other end, there is the IDP effort team. So both of the teams are working on a different tracks, different meetings, different backlogs. So you need to find the balance, how to work between them and to keep them both updated.
Mentioning the development team and quite a few developers that actually work not only in IDP, but also within their organic teams, and they need to split their time. And when you tell them that you want to have them on weekly meetings, you get pushbacks, not only from them, but also from the managers. That was, with no doubt, one of the greatest challenges when I wanted to kick off the quality effort. And we reached an agreement that I get a grace period in which I get all the developers, even if there are only 30% on the effort, they're going to join the weekly meetings. And I'm very glad to say that within 2 weeks, I got feedback from the team. Karen is here. I got really good feedback from the team about being able to understand the full picture, to have focus, to understand where we're going. And I have no trouble to get everybody to the meeting.
We had
Knocking on wood.
similar things on our effort where the daily we started with no daily at all, everything via Slack. We did an IDP just for the daily. We check different approaches. We see what fails and what doesn't. And we started with a Slack channel daily, didn't work. And this is one of the things that I think that brings the team together. The dailies and also Arayesh and the Fun Day. Liat can testify about that. They have a monthly Fun Day barbecue. But yeah, I think that we had like what you just mentioned, and when we are now on bi-weekly, it's not daily, but it's bi-weekly, and I think that it works well. I think that attendance is much higher than what it used to be, and people are getting some feedback, getting exactly what other people are working on, and in case that there are things that are dependent on each other, we can actually catch it on that meeting.
It sounds like a process that this is currently in a process that Outbrain is going through, so we can see some conflicts of interaction. But overall, I think this is my feeling, at least, is that once you start, it's kind of hard to look back. And looking at that, before wrapping this up, I want to, in moving the questions to this amazing audience, what did we do right? Do you feel that IDP is the right change for Outbrain?
So I can say that in Smart Logic, I think one of the things that works right is that the entire team, the product, the business, operation, R&D, are working together as one team towards the same goals. I think this is really works well. And I also think that this, with the open communication, is the key to success. And if I now need to look back at the way that I worked before, and Ori, by the way, asked me like a few months ago that now that I'm few months into the IDP, would I go back to the way I worked before? And the answer is absolutely no. So I can't see myself working as I worked before, and totally think that IDP is the right way to go. And yes, it's challenging, and we are still learning and still trying to improve every day with the escort of Ori and Yamit. But I think that absolutely this is the right process.
Flexibility that we mentioned to constantly learn, get the feedback from the teams and adjust. I think that's one of the greatest things in IDP. To me, there's no way back. And Ori can attest, when we had to choose the next three efforts, I proposed the quality. And I said to him that even if quality is not going to be selected, I'm going to run it as IDP, no matter what.
Yeah, so I totally agree with Liat and Osnat. I wouldn't go back for sure. And one of the reasons that I think that IDP is so successful is the fact that the communication, not just between the teams, but outside as well. As I mentioned, the dashboard, all the dashboards. So I had a meeting with Lior and Eitan, and Ori, also another meeting 2 days ago. It's much easier to communicate the success or the failure of lifters when you have something to show. So it's much easier to show the lifts with the different lifters. So that's one thing. And also the fact that the business has access to all these dashboards as well. So I have actually a business partner, a business lead, Kelly, from the UK, from the account management of the UK. And she attends all these meetings. She sees all the dashboards and she has access to it. And she can come up with ideas of where, not just by the feedback, but also by the dashboard. So I think this is a really big improvement with the way that we work. And as my panel members, my panel friends said, the fact that we're communicating within a team. Before that, we had Omer just joined one of the lifters that we had, and it was smooth, I think, unlike previous times where we had to slot the exact time where we develop, where each team member from different teams of the company has slots to work on a specific lifter. Now that everyone are on the same meetings and under the same umbrella, it's much easier to communicate and find out issues.
From my side, I can say that it's very nice to see and to feel like your work is much more contributing by the lifters that you are doing, and eventually that you are working only on what's that makes an impact. So,
thank you. Stay with us. We're gonna move to the questions from the audience, but let's see if we managed to make an impact today. Please raise your hand if you're excited. More excited. Moran, raise your hand. Yeah, we've beat the lifter. Thank you, everyone. Let's see if we have some questions from the audience.
I don't know.
We all got corona now because passing the microphones, you got it as well. Yeah.
Stam. I don't know if it's too early to say, but was there any lifter which you thought at first it would be successful and later you understand it's not? But and what would you do then? Would you still cut it or go on with it?
So I think that Liat has a lot of examples, so I'll give her the chance to answer, but I have one as well.
That's
Wow.
KPIs, by the way.
That's always KPI, yes. It's a good question, Yamit. So I honestly don't have such an example yet. It's probably going to happen in the future, but I can tell that we need to constantly measure, okay? Not only measure in the points where we are stopping the development, not only in the crawl, walk, run step, but we need to constantly measure. And yes, if we will see that something is outdated and not providing any value, the cost of maintaining it, okay, will be a negative ROI, right? So we will need to kill it once we are realizing that it's not providing the value.
Okay, so that's a good question. I don't know if everyone heard what is the difference between MVP and crawl, walk, run. So, or crawl, right? So the main difference is the fact that there is a product. So for MVP, there is a product. For crawl, there is no product. Crawl can be something. I can give an example for crawl. One of the lifters that we had is to bring more users towards a specific CBS mode. And the crawl was something with intercom. We just popped up a message in intercom, and that was the crawl. So there is no development here. So there is no real product here that we released. While on MVP, there is something that he actually built, and the intention is to build something that is very basic, like Shay said, Hachana lemazgan. It's just the infrastructure, so you can scale it up and bring it. I don't know if you know the drawing of MVP where there is the skateboard, and then the scooter, and then the bike, and then the motorcycle, and then the car. So this is MVP. You build something that actually works. But with crawl, you don't build something that works. Sometimes it's not even building anything. It will just test prove your hypothesis. That's it.
I wanted to ask, you talk a lot about measurements, and do you get enough support from BI, from the data analysts?
No.
That makes me worried, that once measurement is so much in the core and such key, that do we have enough resources? And
I can say from my side that I do get support. I have a in-house BI analyst, and I have a team of data scientists, so I'm covered. But maybe the other team.
Perhaps Hila wants to answer that one. We're currently do not have the full support where Hila is establishing that practices and that team and we're hiring product analysts. In the meantime, we're getting a lot of help from people who are already somehow involved. Personally, on the quality effort, we're getting a lot of help from Galit Gablinger. She's on the operations team. She knows the data, and she's creating the dashboard and provide us the data. But we definitely would like to have a product analyst constantly in the team. So Hila, yeah, hiring. Hila has open positions.
Okay, I see Tal has a question on Zoom. 2 questions. What is the typical time period of a full crawl, walk, run cycle?
Yeah, it depends on the lifter. You can have, I think that Moran Gavish is here, and I think that he released within a day a crawl that it was, I think that it might go into the test might be 2 weeks of a test, or maybe even more, but it all depends on the time that you need to test. It depends on if the development is something that takes a while or not. So it really varies between the lifters.
I want to say it's important to say that, lifters are aimed to be, crawls are meant to be quick, but given the potential impact, you will invest development. It's not the crawl will not have any development. It's just evaluating the effort against the impact, which is much more clear with those measurements available.
Hi. As a designer, I'm very worried about the IDP because design is something that is very hard to measure. So how do you not lose sight or effort towards stuff that are harder to measure? How do you not chase the small lifts, like the easy KPIs, and not ignore like quality of code or user experience?
I'm holding the mic, so maybe I'm the only one that. So I think that I can give an example here. So I think that on the crawl stage, usually we won't put in design at all, or we might. But Sarah, for example, gave us a design for a crawl stage that was very simple. We just removed a default. But on the walk stage, we did develop something that is very. I asked Sarah to do something that is not changing a lot, even though that she wants to do something that is more that is bigger. And that's the walk that we did. We had to change the UI because that was part of the walk. And on the run stage, yeah, I think that we will do something that is more, it's bigger. So I think, again, it depends on the lifters. On some lifters, we will decide to do something that is very skinny, but eventually the run will be as we can, like we should have done it without IDP.
Osnat disagrees.
Yeah, 2 things. One, sometimes we do the crawl phase and we get the impact that we need, and we realize, or the walk stage, and we realize that we don't need to move forward. We're going to invest the time in other lifters. It's really a matter of priority. But I also remember the discussion that I had with you regarding UI long ago. You were very concerned, like if we're doing work without UI and we're getting the impact without UI, so you are very concerned that we're not going to do the UI at all. So no, from my experience, but it really depends on the lifters. We start without UI. If we don't need that, we'll let the operation team or the dev team to operate the feature. But eventually, if you want to scale and you want to give the AMs the options to operate the features, to do things on their own without depending on the operational team, we're actually going to do something like that in one of the lifters in the optimization engine now. We need to have the UI. Eventually, you need the user interface to let them do the work. And then when we do the work, we do it right with design QA and everything involved.
We have 2 more questions on Zoom.
And in the go-to-market, yeah. Go-to-market is, to me, with internal tools, the go-to-market is internally. So users are AMs, operations, yeah, same.
So 2 more questions from Zoom. Some lifters will probably need time and scale or a good placement to show results. Opening a lifter on a specific widget or publisher will not necessarily bring the results another placement will. Are you making sure to give a lifter a fair chance to shine?
So this is a good question, and I think that depends on the lifter. We are deciding what is the right crawl, okay? And sometimes if we're talking about widgets, experiences, anything that is exposed to the consumer, and we realize that we cannot onboard it on specific publisher because every publisher and every site is different. So we are opening it, for example, to 10% of the entire network. And we are making sure that the A/B test is really symmetric in that way and that it's not biased by any other external items.
And last question, if you have multiple ideas that are strongly related, do you refer to all of them as a single lifter or break it down to very small pieces, each as a dedicated lifter?
So I can tell, at least from my perspective, that I always prefer to break it down to the smallest elements possible in order to be able to quickly understand if there is a value or not. So this is at least my perspective.
Have you ever killed the lifter and it was resurrected?
It's resurrected.
Came back to life. It was an assumption, that, following up this question, maybe, there's always the doubt, especially when you care about something. We talked about, not giving names to lifters, not to get too attached, but, sometimes you feel you test something, but you feel the test didn't really. I have this case now where, we developed something, not IDP, by the way, full blown production. It's not delivering right. And I'm digging. I'm looking for the positive impact. So I'm wondering if
The other problem, I think, you understand that you have to kill it.
you have to kill it, but the fact is,
Yeah, I think you're at the point of the challenge where you have to decide if you kill it or not.
I'm just looking for
But
the.
by per your question, I don't remember anything that we tried again, even though I do have these thoughts about the auto tests. Right? Yeah.
Technically, we have a section on the board that is deleted lifters, and I never look at it, so I don't think that it will resurrect because of that. So
No zombie lifters.
yeah, exactly.
So we do have one example where we believe real-timeness or fresher models will provide better results. So currently we have a delay of 6 hours. We tried out a delay of 2 hours and we did not see the lift we expected. So we killed it and we said to ourselves, we will try this again for sure. We just need to increase scale first and then try again.
Good example.
Before we end this, do you guys think do you think they passed the test? Should they get their license? Yeah?
Lastly, I want to thank Emily for finding the time to organize us. Wow. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Danny. And a special thank also to Yamit, which is walking with us, crawling with us across this process. And Shani. And basically, Ori as well. Thank you.